This story was told to me by my grandfather. This story has stuck with me for many years, even though my grandfather passed away many years ago now. He didn't like talking about it, and often tried to change the subject when this was brought up. However, it's always stuck with me. My granddad was a pilot in World War II. He's from England. However, after the war he moved to Norway, which is where a lot of my family live now. When he was growing up, pre-war, he lived in a very small community. He said that everyone helps everybody, and it was one of those towns where everyone knew each other. Because times were hard, sometimes he used to go into the local fields and take cabbages and potatoes and bring them back for his mum to cook. This wasn't a wealthy area, and no one had much money. He said sometimes he'd have to go a little bit further out because all the other kids in the area were doing the same thing. This one time, he described walking a little bit further out. Whilst he was looking for potatoes and whatever he could find, he stumbled into a field that he hadn't seen before. When he got there, he was walking around just looking at the ground, not really looking where he was going. He looked up, and probably 30 feet away, he saw this man walking with a weird gait towards him. He said the man was dressed in all black, with a big black trench coat on, almost like an undertaker's coat. He said the man had a hat on too, and he couldn't make out any facial features. However, he said when he had a close look at the man's face, he couldn't make out any features, and it looked as though the man didn't even have a face. The man was walking towards him with intent, in a malicious kind of way, so my grandfather turned around and ran away. He said the man didn't appear to have a face or facial features, but potentially could have been wounded in World War One, so he wasn't too sure if this was just a wound. Anyway, many months later, my grandfather and his friends decided that they were going to go fishing. So, after school, they all went home and told their parents where they were going. My grandfather went home and told his mum that he was going to the lake and that he'd be back later on. He didn't give a specific time. He went out and he knew he was going to be there a little bit earlier than his friends, so he decided just to set up and get everything ready. As he was walking towards the lake, he saw a man standing over the direction where he was headed, right next to their fishing spot. As he started getting closer, the man's body stayed still, but his head slowly turned towards him, looking directly at my grandfather. It was evident that this was the same man from before, and the impending sense of doom took over my grandfather. The man still didn't seem to have any features, but he was just far enough away that he couldn't fully make out if this was right or not. However, he said that he could make out an intense and eerie grin on the man's face. The man didn't appear to move, however, my grandfather didn't take any chances. He ran back all the way home and told his mum what happened. She didn't believe him and thought that it was just his mind playing tricks on him when she said he'd seen the same man before, but was also a little bit wary and maybe trying to make him feel better. She told him not to go out that day. The next day at school, my grandfather asked his friends if they'd seen the weird man, to which they replied they hadn't. My grandfather was confused as to why his friends hadn't seen this man standing in the exact spot they were going to. However, he quickly forgot about this and got on with his life. A few years later, my grandfather decided that he was going to go back out to the fields and try and find some more potatoes. He was searching the fields and didn't see a thing. Clearly someone else had got there before him, or it just wasn't the season for them. Regardless, he was disappointed and started heading home. It was dark at this point, and all of a sudden it started raining. Typical, he thought to himself as he walked down the muddy path. All of a sudden, there was a huge flash of lightning, and very quickly, only for a split second, it illuminated a figure maybe 15 feet away from him again. My grandfather stopped and decided that he wasn't going to go any further until he decided that this was a safe situation to be in. Again, another flash of lightning, maybe 30 seconds later, and the silhouette was gone. Phew, my granddad thought to himself, thank God there was no one there. He said it was particularly eerie this night, and he just felt on edge. So he started walking again in the direction, and once again a huge clap of thunder, and it illuminated the same silhouette again, but this time even closer. He said he could briefly make out the hat the man was wearing, and also a big jacket, one that went all the way down to the man's feet. All of a sudden the memories from the man he'd seen years ago came flooding back. Was it the same man, he thought to himself? He didn't know. My grandfather started walking backwards, taking steps back towards the field, rather than the direction to head home. He couldn't make out anything. He said it was pitch black at this point. He had been in the field for longer than he realised, and he should have headed home soon, and his mum would wonder where he was. He decided that he was going to hide behind this barn that was on the other side of the field, so he slowly but surely made his way there. He got there and he hid behind the outside wall. He didn't know where this man was, and he couldn't really hear anything because of the sound of the rain clapping down on the ground. All of a sudden, there was another huge clap of thunder, and once again, he saw the silhouette of the man, but this time standing outside the barn. He could briefly see the silhouette of the man, but he didn't think the man could see him, as he was outside the barn. He stayed silent for what felt like hours, but he said it was probably only a few minutes. He was peering between two planks of wood inside the barn. He was on the outside, and he said he had rain dripping down his face. He was trying to be quiet. He said there was a tractor behind him, and nothing in the barn on the inside apart from what he thought was farming materials. He stayed there, and nothing happened. He thought he must have lost the man. Once again, thunder, and he said this is the most terrifying thing that he ever saw in his life. He saw the man's face on the other side of the planks of wood he was standing on, peering at him through the cracks between the wood. He said his eyes were so wide and almost black, staring straight back at him, with a menacing grin on his face. He turned around and fled as fast as he possibly could. He ran behind the barn, slipping and tripping as he ran. He got back on the path and ran all the way home. He didn't look back, he didn't care to. He just needed to get away from this man. He got in and told his mum about it, and she told him to never go back to those fields again. He said that man haunted his dreams for the rest of his life. Sometimes he would wake up in the middle of the night, 20, 30 years later, and he'd see that man's face. He said he never felt easy in his own house, and he always felt like there was always someone watching him. He understands that this is probably just his imagination, but he doesn't understand why, even 30, 40 years later, he still sees that man's face, just as vivid as he did in that barn on that night. Nothing ever happened in that village, and as far as he's aware, there was no one who lived even remotely close to that field. He doesn't know why that man was there. He doesn't know why he saw him on so many occasions and why he always seemed to know where he was going. He doesn't even know if this was a man. Was it some kind of ghost? Was it some sort of figment of his imagination? Who was it, and why me? Why did they need to torment me? Before he died, I remember my grandfather opening up about more of these stories, and he actually confessed to seeing this man one more time in his life. However, he said it was much later, and the man hadn't changed. He said he didn't want to go into the story, but he was going to tell me one day. He said that he saw the man whilst living in Norway, and that when he was ready to tell me he would. Unfortunately, my grandfather died of cancer, and I never got to hear that story. Maybe it's written down somewhere, I don't know. He always kept a diary, and he left them to me, so maybe I can have a read through those and find out more about who this man was. This happened probably only a few years back. Me and my friend John have been friends for life. We grew up together and we lived in the same town. In fact, we lived down the same road. John and I have always been into fitness, and quite often we go for long walks together. This is because we can't make it to the same gym at the same time, and he works different hours to me. But at least 2 or 3 times a week, we try and go on these long cardio walks and just talk. It's a nice way to keep up with each other and also try and get a little bit of our passion for fitness in during the day. We also enjoy fishing, and when we were young, we'd go down to the local river. There's a few lakes and rivers near where we live, but the river was our favourite. Our parents always told us when we were young never to go to the river, so quite often we'd have to try and sneak out and not be seen when we was going to the river. We would jump over the wall and down onto the embankment. Now this isn't the safest because of course we could only do this when the tide was out. And if you know anything about rivers, the tide can go in and out very, very quickly. If you're not on top of it, it can be very dangerous. Our parents would always tell us horror stories of these kids that jumped over and drowned. But of course, we nodded and just pretended to listen. Sometimes we'd go fishing down there, even if just for 30 or 40 minutes. Sometimes you could catch little things like crabs and prawns, but mostly we just liked walking across the river embankment when the tide was out. We were always very careful to be near to a ladder that helps you climb out. But on some stretches of this river, there's only a ladder every 100 meters or so. So if you get caught in between, then you're in trouble. Anyway, we're in our early 20s now, and we hadn't been down to the river for a long time, as we were into different things, but like we say, we still went on these long walks. One day, we was on one of these walks, and John said to me, "Hey, how about we go down to the river for old time's sake?" I thought it was a good idea. We hadn't been there for years. It would be quite nostalgic to go back to that spot that we always used to hang out at school. So that's what we did. The next day, we were going to go for another walk, and I checked the tide, and it was set to be out for at least an hour that day. So we figured out what time was best to go there, so we could have the longest period of time walking along the embankment, and we headed out. We hung around that wall for a good 20 minutes before jumping over. This is because when we were young, we didn't give it any thoughts, but nowadays it seemed kind of dangerous. But obviously not as flexible as we were, and my hamstrings aren't great. So when you jump over this wall, there's a small ledge that you need to balance on, and the drop down is probably 10-15 feet, so you really don't want to fall on this. It was also covered in moss, so extremely slippery, but if you shuffle along maybe 5 meters, you get to the ladder that you can climb down. The tide was well out, so we thought we'd be fine. It was getting pretty dark, and we didn't want anyone to see us jumping over, so we waited until it was clear, and we did it. Despite being terrified of falling, we managed it, and we got down to the embankment. We were having a nice relaxing walk, and just walking along, when all of a sudden, I realised how dark it had got, and I couldn't see where we'd just jumped down from. I didn't say anything, which is my first mistake, but we just kept talking and walking. All of a sudden, I realised I don't know how much time has passed. I turned to John and said, "Hey John, how long have we been down here?" "I don't know." "Oh damn, maybe we should head back." I agreed, and we started walking back. Now, as you walk down this river, and whilst the tide is out, it feels as though you're walking in a straight line, but you're not. It actually curls around and bends and loops a little bit. So I didn't know exactly where we were. So as we were coming up to a corner, there was a dim bit of light coming from the moon, and my heart sank. Straight ahead of us, we could see that there was water crashing against one of the walls that we needed to walk round. The tide had come in so quickly that we hadn't realised that it was coming in behind us. We had to get back to where we knew we could get out. We didn't need to say anything to each other, we just started running. We ran as fast as we could, but as we were winding round, we realised that the tide was coming in fast. Now, the currents here are extremely strong, and people have drowned in this river, so we were really scared. Also the fact that no one knew we were here, and it was extremely dark now. As we got up to the corner, the water was knee height now, and we were trying as fast as we could to get round the corner. We realised that we were probably too far out to get back to our initial spot, so we had to devise a plan. Even though it was only knee to waist height, we felt as though we couldn't move. The current was quite strong and it kept pulling us, and we couldn't really maintain our balance well, and we kept slipping. I decided that we were in trouble here and we needed to call for help. I had a torch on me and I took it out of my pocket and shined it against the wall. I was trying to find anywhere that we could climb up. Maybe there was somewhere that we could just get out quickly here, but no luck. I was flashing my light on and off so people knew we were here, but no one seemed to be around. There was a ledge, probably 7 foot high, that I thought maybe one of us could get up and call for help. I sacrificed myself to stay down so John could get up. So what we did was we got John on my shoulders. This was incredibly difficult in this much water and when it was this dark. I got him on my shoulders where he could grab onto the edge of the ledge and pull himself up. It was incredibly slippery and it wasn't a straight ledge that was just leveled off. It was kind of on an incline and he was slipping the entire time, clinging on with his fingers. But he managed to pull himself up and get over the wall. He told me he'd be back and he was going to go and get some help. So I stood there, not knowing what to do. Do I try and find a ladder to get out of here? The water was rising and it was stomach height now, and I was being pulled all around. The water was still rising and it was just above my waist now. I was terrified. I stayed silent and I couldn't hear anyone around. All I could hear was the waves around me crashing. This is where it ends, I thought to myself. My stupidity has got me in this situation. Now I'm going to die here alone. And when I thought all hope was lost, I saw a speedboat coming down the river with its light on. I flashed my torch, as thankfully I managed to keep it above the water, and they came over to me. They dragged me onto the boat and got me ashore. Myself or John brought our phones with us. When John got out, he found a man who called the police for us, and they sent out a rescue speedboat. Thankfully they were there in time, as the water was above my belly button now, and if I was in there much longer, I would definitely have drowned. The police told me I was probably only 15 minutes from drowning. If I'd stayed out there much longer, I would have been pulled in by the current and my chance of survival would have been very low. Thank God they got there in time, and if I'd been out there any longer, I don't think I would have made it. I felt really stupid for this, for putting myself and John in such danger. My message to anyone out there is always let someone know where you're going, and don't jump down onto river embankments. There's a reason that your parents tell you not to. Stay safe, people. Hello everyone, this is the part of the video where there's no more stories, so if you're only here for the stories, then there's plenty more on my channel, and plenty of other channels out there that narrate stories much better than I do. I'm just here for a general chat at this point. How have you all been? What have you guys been up to? I'm actually re-recording this part just before uploading it, because I listened back to the video, and it was so boring that I decided that I cannot put that out. And I know this part of the video isn't exactly exhilarating, but that was really, really dull. So I'm going to try and make it a little bit more interesting if possible. It's actually Christmas Eve, and it's going to be, whilst recording this, it's going to turn Christmas Day. So yeah, I'm recording this pretty late. I hope you have a nice Christmas. Have you got any plans for Christmas? Let me know in the comments. Like, what do you normally do on Christmas Day? I think my favourite part of Christmas is, I mean, it's obvious, it's the food, isn't it? It has to be the food. I love Christmas food. Do you know what? I really, really love roast potatoes. I really do. I think they go under the radar, and I think roast potatoes are genuinely one of the most underappreciated foods out there. I think potatoes in general, when you think about it, They're so versatile. You can have chips, you can have crisps, you can have them roasted, mashed, boiled. You can just do so much with them. They are very, very underappreciated in my opinion. So yeah, obviously the food is my favourite part. I like some board games. I like the board game Risk. I don't like Monopoly. I get with board games. I think my problem is I get I get bored. I get really bored, and you get the people that take them really seriously. And I start off taking it serious, and then I get to the point where I just want this to finish. So I think any board game over half an hour, I can't be bothered. Cannot be bothered to be playing a board game for more than half an hour. I like drafts. I think drafts are fun. I want to learn how to play chess. That's one game I really want to learn how to play. It just looks like a more complicated version of drafts, but I'd like to learn it. It looks quite good. What else is there? I used to have a game. I don't know if anyone else remember this. There was a game called Mousetrap. I used to play it when I was a kid. I want to play that game again. I really like that. I also really liked what's it called? Oh, it was like Rebound or something. This is a really old game. You used to there's like a little metal ball with a ring around it, like a marble almost, and you used to launch it towards these rubber bands that would ping it backwards, and it landed on a little spot, so you get different points for the amount of spots you'd get, or it would just drop off the edge and you get nothing. I don't know if anyone's played that, but it's a really old game, but I used to love that game. Yeah, what do you guys do on Christmas? Because I don't really know too much about what other families do. Boxing Day is a thing here, though. I don't know if many other places do Boxing Day. I think it's I think Boxing Day is in some ways better than Christmas, because I normally see all of my family on Boxing Day compared to Christmas. It's just like my immediate family. So I think sometimes Boxing Day can be a bit better in some ways, but I still love Christmas Day. I do love it a lot. I also find it strange how some foods are considered Christmas foods, but you never have them throughout the year. Things like pigs in blankets. I don't even touch a pig in blanket throughout the year, but when it's Christmas time, I'll eat loads of them, and I love them. I could happily have them throughout the year, but I don't even see them. I don't even I wouldn't even know if they existed throughout the year. I never have them. Same as cranberry sauce. Just never have it, and I love it, but I just don't eat it. It's just not something I'd even think to pick up in a shop. Even things like turkey. Loads of people have turkey at Christmas, but not many people have turkey throughout the year. Most people have chicken, don't they? No, I don't know. I think it's strange that there's so many foods. Like Brussels sprouts, another one. No, you're not telling me that anyone eats a Brussels sprout throughout the year, but on Christmas you do. I'm not a massive fan of Brussels sprouts, though. They're a bit weird. But things like, stuffing as well. I personally, I do have stuffing throughout the year. I love stuffing. If you put a bowl of I could have a bowl of stuffing just as a meal on its own. I absolutely love it. It's good in sandwiches as well. But I don't know how I got onto this. I also like vegan roasts. Vegan roasts are underrated as well. Vegan food in general is underrated. It tastes really good. The vegan sausage roll in Greg's is amazing. But yeah, I'm recording this so late, I can't even remember the things I've spoken about. I'm so tired. I probably shouldn't be recording at this point. I also want to upload this tonight, which is going to take ages to save, but I'm going to do it. Yeah. At the moment, everybody seems to have a cold here. You speak to anyone, they're like, oh, I've got a cold. I feel terrible. At the moment, touch wood, I haven't had it so far. I mean, now I've said it, I'll wake up with a rotten one, but I haven't so far caught a cold. Normally, if there's one going, I'll have it. It's frustrating how much I catch colds, actually. I bought myself some multivitamins just to see if they they help with my immune system, because I think my immune system must be terrible, because I will just catch a cold whenever if I go out somewhere, and say if I've gone out to, I don't know, London, I will get a cold. Always. I know it's from like the tubes and stuff, but it's just so annoying. So I'm trying to boost my immune system. Apparently green tea is really good for that. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to just boost my immune system to the point where, I don't get things easily. Or if I do get a cold, I don't get a stinking rotten cold. I don't know if that's how it works, but that's what I'm trying to do. I don't want to get a rotten cold every time I catch one. Anyway, it has just turned Christmas right now. So, Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope everyone has a good day. What I'm going to do soon is another charity of the month, which is something I've slacked on a little bit. So if you have any suggestions, put them in the comments, and we're going to start that up again. We'll start up. It's not been gone very long, but I want to start doing it regularly again. It's been a couple of months, but yeah, suggest some charities. I'm actually thinking for the next one, maybe something along the lines of homelessness or food banks or something like that. So let me know what charities you'd like me to check out and donate to, and I'll share it with you guys as well. Actually, at the time of recording this, I'm working on a project on just a Guy Fawkes video, and I think it's a really interesting topic, so I'm trying to just get everything right on it. It's been something I've been working on for Bonfire Night in the UK is in early November, so I'm obviously way late on it, but oh well. I think it's a really interesting topic, so I'm sure you guys would find it interesting too. So once I've got that done and finished, I'll upload that, hopefully in the next week. I'll try and get that out. So for now, these are just a couple of stories, and yeah, so just bear with me for now, and I'll try and get a topic video out. If there's any particular topics you really like me covering, then let me know. Normally on this channel, I like to make shorter, concise videos, whereas I'm not gonna make a 25-minute long topic video. But like for example, I want to speak about some kind of aviation incidents, but I'm not gonna spend 25 minutes pretending to understand the intricacies of aviation. But I'd like to get the facts and put it all together for you in like a 5 or 6 minute video and point you in the direction of more information. That's something I'd really be interested in covering. Like the Amelia Earhart videos that I did, I love those videos. I love making that kind of topic video. I like things like mysteries. That's what I'm really into, that kind of thing. So for example, I'm interested in, I watched something recently, I read something recently about a plane that's engines both failed over the Atlantic Ocean, and they had to perform like the longest ever glide of a plane, and they basically saved everyone's life on board. But the reason that the incident happened in the first place was due to human error, things like confirmation bias and that kind of psychological factor, and I think that's so fascinating. It's something I'd like to cover. So if it's something you think you'd be interested in me talking about, then let me know, because obviously I would love to talk about this kind of thing on a video, but it just all depends on whether you guys would be interested in that type of video. I'm fascinated by World War One and World War Two. So like for example, the World War One video that I recently did about going over the top and that kind of thing. I love finding out information about these kind of things, and I really enjoy like adding in information. I like sort of almost teaching people things, or trying to inform people of things that have happened that you might not know about, and that's one of the things that I really like doing on this channel. As much as I like stories, I think, sorry, I always need to cough when I turn this mic on. Another question I have for you guys is, of all the stories you've ever heard, scary stories, which one sticks with you the most? I'd like you to put it in the comments. It doesn't have to be from my channel. Any story that you've listened to, what sticks with you the most? And have you ever been in a situation where you've noticed that it was a dangerous situation because of listening to these kind of stories. That's the kind of thing, I mean, I'd love to hear. Have you ever been in a situation where you thought, oh, actually, I'm more wary because I heard this on a story before and this sounds similar to that situation? Has that ever happened to any of you guys? I'd love to know. So yeah, so firstly, what story sticks with you the most, and secondly, have any of them kind of stories ever helped you in a real life scenario? I think that would be very interesting to find out what people say around that kind of thing, because I know for me, I'm a lot more wary after reading so many of these stories. I think, I mean, it's only natural, I suppose, but I'm a lot more cautious at night, and I'm a lot more aware of, what's going on around me. Even things like letting people know where I am, which is something that's so important. I do it a lot more now, whereas when I was younger, I didn't really. I did, but not to the same extent I do now. I always make sure I tell someone where I'm going, when I plan to be back, just because it can save your life. Technically, I mean, hopefully it never has to be a situation where it can save your life, but it could. And I think that's what I'd want people to take away mostly from these videos is, tips and tricks on how to avoid certain scenarios, or just to notice them. Because the most important part, I think, of a lot of the scary stories that I've read is actually someone noticing, or how long it takes them to realize that this situation they're in is dangerous, and ways to get out of that. Because it's not always possible, but there are sometimes ways to get out of these situations. That's why I always say, always tell someone where you're going, someone you trust, and when you're going to be back, because it can save your life. But anyway, I'm gonna go to sleep now because I've been up for way too long today, and it's very late. It's 12:15 now. Yeah, so I'm gonna go to sleep. Hope you guys enjoy this video, and if you did, let me know, and I hope you all have a lovely Christmas and New Year, and let me know what you guys get up to. Speak to you soon. Bye.